the route that I was going, I just knew it's about to start really costing me in my life. I just knew that if I keep going down this road with my decisions, that God can restore anything, but there's costs that come later in life. And I just knew it's about to start costing me in some big ways.
On the other side of your yes is people's lives, right?
Yeah.
I do not want to get to the throne room of God and God being like, man, like, look at what you missed out on.
When you're in love with Jesus, like when you're truly in love with him, there's just something that happens in your heart. You want to honor him.
So how would you advise a young lady and how would you advise a young man to walk in purity? What does that decision do and how does it affect your life moving forward? Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Beyond Pod. We have a good one for you guys today. I'm here with some of my most favorite people in the whole entire world. We have John and Marlene. They used to pastor Beyond maybe about 6 months ago until I recently transitioned in as the young adult pastors. But, man, I love you guys so much. You guys are some of my most favorite people in the whole entire world. You have believed in me. You guys have prayed with me. You guys have led me through difficult times in my life, in my walk with the Lord. So I am just so honored to have you guys on the podcast today, just to glean from you and just to learn from you, but also for the audience to hear you guys and all that you have to share today. But we're so honored to have you on as guests today.
Thank you.
So honored to be here. I can't believe, part of me feels like it's been way longer than 6 months since we transitioned out. And then part of me feels like it's been 2 weeks. So it's kind of crazy, but it's so fun to watch you and Lauren and all the team over here and all the team and beyond just excelling. We're so proud of you guys. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. And of course we have Lo here. Lo's whatever. Lo's like
wow.
whatever.
Cool. Yeah. Just the usual.
No, it's cool though. It's cool.
Yeah.
But we have a really good one. We're excited. Something that is very controversial. I just think our stage of life, when it comes to 18 to 29-year-olds, we're thinking about getting married. We're thinking about dating. We're thinking about singleness. And I think there's a right way to go about it and there's a wrong way to go about it. So please, this is us for us to really glean from you and to learn, even just sharing your story and just wisdom on how to really go about it. But before we jump in, please share a little bit about yourselves. And your family, your story, and then we'll kind of go right into it. I already know it, but for the sake of everybody else really knowing your story, please share.
Yeah. You can go first.
You want me to go first? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm Jonathan Dirmann. This is my wife, Marlene, as you guys know. So we've been married. It'll be 10 years in October that we'll be married. We got married when I was 19. She was 41. No, I'm just kidding. I always say that joke. Actually, one time I told, when I was engaged to her, I told this lady that would cut my hair back in the day. I told her that she was like, "Oh, you're engaged." She's like, "You're only 19 and all that." And I was like, "Yeah, but it's really good." And I said, she's like 57, but she's wise or whatever. And I could just tell like she was trying to be nice about it. Oh, it threw her off so much. No, Marlene was 22 when we got married. I was 19, so I'm messing with her because I still have 6 months in my 30s.
Yeah, but
or in my 20s before I'm in my 30s, and she's in there.
If people were to ask who looks older, I think they would say that you look older.
Is that true?
So I would like to take a poll, honestly,
Give
because
us some
have
feedback.
told us that.
I would
think you
probably
guys look
say
like
you,
you're the
John.
same age.
I think John looks older.
Do I?
Yeah, see?
What?
I actually found a white hair in his beard.
Oh, in his beard?
Yeah, and I wanted to pluck it,
think
and he
I
wouldn't
trimmed it
let
today.
me.
Well, you
That's
turned 30
wisdom.
this year, right?
I know.
That's like...
I do feel like I may look a little bit older than Mar's young.
I am young. I'm young.
Yeah. So we were the young adult pastors for years with Beyond. Transitioned about 6 months ago over to Jared, you've just been doing amazing.
Yeah,
Currently we're still pastors at the church. She's the kids pastor at the Anaheim campus. And then I'm partnering with the senior pastor over discipleship to help our new discipleship system thrive and move, which is also my dad. The senior pastor's also my dad. That's right.
Which is your dad.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Please share, because you got married at 19.
Yep.
Which I think in today's society is like
Crazy.
absurd. Yeah, it's crazy.
Did he say how many kids we have? I don't think he did.
Oh, you didn't.
Yeah.
How many kids
No.
do you have, Mar? How many kids have you birthed?
We have this many.
What?
She's too many.
No,
That's
I'm
what
just
it is.
kidding.
No, we don't have too many.
No, it's not too many. We have 4, and
Wow.
it is so amazing. We love, I think, the season that we're in parenthood, and we have an 8-year-old, 6-year-old, 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old right
Yeah.
now.
Girl, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
And so it's so fun.
Mhm.
It's so fun. We love it. It's definitely it can be tiring at moments, but we can't imagine not being parents in this season. And we had kids really early on. So
That's true.
we got married within like our dating, engagement, marriage was like I think like 5 months all combined.
4.5.
Four and a half, and then
Which we don't just like recommend, by the way.
Yeah.
that was
It's
just
a-
our
it was a
that
specific
about it.
circumstance.
That
Wait,
was-
so
we'll
dating,
get there. We're
marriage. Wait.
So dating, we
Dating.
dated for 2.5 months, and then we were engaged for 2 months.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
And that's
yeah, it was fast.
we just knew, and so it's not for everybody, but it was for
our
us. It was right
story.
for
It
us.
was-
Yeah.
And so we said we wanted to wait 5 years to have kids, and we got the 5 right, but it was 5 months after
Nice.
we got married
Let's go.
That we got pregnant.
We got pregnant.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, he likes to make
Not that we
sure
had a
that.
kid 5 months.
We got pregnant, and then after that, we were just like, let's just have kids. I think we both jumped to just having kids close in age. So once we had the first
Yeah.
one, we're just like, let's keep having them, and it's been so. It feels like the past 10 years, like I've just been pregnant every year, like pregnant. Yeah,
It does feel like
it feels
that.
like that.
Yeah.
But in the season that we're in ministry with our family, and just seeing like their personalities and
Come
just
to
like
life, yeah.
come to life, and that God's entrusted them to us to like disciple and to like just train up. It's like one of the greatest privileges. It's my favorite
Yeah.
job in the world. It really
Working
is.
with kids is so different too, because growing up, even when I started in ministry at 19, I've been in basically every ministry you can think of except for kids ministry. So I didn't know until I had kids what it's like actually working with kids. But I'll give you an example. Like the other day I was reading the Bible with our 4 kids, and I like read through a chapter, and I just asked them like, hey, what did you guys catch in this chapter? And our 8-year-old Riley, she did like a great job just laying out what she caught.
Yeah.
Our 6-year-old son did like basically said the same thing, but a little less refined. Our 4-year-old Emma just said something that was like relevant-ish, very cute. And then I get to our 2-year-old Shepherd, he's 2.5, and I go, Shepherd, I go, buddy, I go, what did you catch from the reading today? He goes, I catched a fish. I said, okay, I'll take it.
so
I'll
funny.
take it.
But
for
Jesus
today,
said, cast your nets.
yeah, just
catch
not
a
in the
fish,
chapter we
so-
read.
Yeah.
There was
Yeah.
nothing about
No,
fish.
no, there was
No.
nothing about fish. No, no, he's just somehow, some way,
That's
he's heard the
awesome.
phrase that you catch a fish, and that's what came to his mind when I asked him
Yeah.
what what did he catch? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's
it's a
fun.
roller coaster. It's so fun though.
So he was
Um,
asking though, I think, and then I deterred the conversation, but getting married at 19.
Yeah.
Yeah. So should we jump right into the story
Yeah,
of?
I think
Sure.
so,
Okay.
yeah,
So
please.
so I grew up as a pastor's kid. So I grew up obviously with my dad as the senior pastor. So for me, I grew up. I had a really great encounter with the Lord at a young age, like as a kid, and was walking with the Lord. Teenage years got a little rocky for me. And I would say that I was just the definition of a lukewarm Christian, like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And at 19, actually, I'll give some extra details, but right after high school, I was working at Chick-fil-A, and I was going to go to college. I wanted to go to college and wrestle. I didn't even know until later I sent applications that I wasn't anywhere near good enough. I found out that Cal Baptist University, so I made it to CIF, and I did not make it to Masters and then their state. Cal Baptist University, they ended up getting back to me, and they're like, we deny some guys that place in state. So
Wow.
So I was like, okay, so then,
That's
that's
why.
not,
That's
Your
why.
dreams were
yeah,
shattered
they
in an
shared that.
instant.
Yeah.
That makes sense why he wants to train up Shepherd
Yeah.
and Noah Young in
Yeah.
wrestling.
Wants to live
They're
They
already
love
in
to wrestle.
jiu-jitsu
Oh, they
and
love.
wrestling.
They
yeah.
love. Yeah, Noah's in jiu-jitsu kind of off and on right now, but so I was going to go to college and was wanting to go to college and wrestle. That was kind of the immediate game plan for me. My youth pastor asked me to do an internship with him instead. And he said, you're going to have to quit your job and not go to college. This is a full-time internship. So I prayed about it, and I felt good about that route. And so I did. I quit my job at Chick-fil-A, which was the first job I had. I didn't go to college. to become one of the worst interns that you could ever find at anywhere ever. I just every assignment I did half-heartedly. I showed up late to everything. All the guidelines and commitments of like to dedicate this year to focus on the Lord. No dating or dating behavior and all that in this year. I just like totally disregarded all of
Did you
them.
at least say my pleasure because you worked at Chick-fil-A?
I've always said my pleasure because I worked at Chick-fil-A. That's something that stuck. Yeah. So I did that for about 6 months. It was supposed to be a year-long internship. After about 6 months, he corrected me for something that was good to correct me for, because it was basically he addressed, I think, that my heart wasn't, he could tell like I'm doing things half-heartedly and all that. And the way he said it, it was just a little too strong for my appetite in that moment, because when you're doing things half-heartedly, you just can't even receive anything. And so he corrected me in what, in hindsight, I would look back and say was actually a pretty nice way to correct me, but he corrected me with some strength. And I responded via text. I texted him later and said, hey, thanks for the opportunity, but I'm done, it's just not for me. And I don't see myself continuing. And so he just responded, basically saying, okay, love you, hope things work out. And a few days later, my dad had found out I was still living at home. And he basically said, what are you doing? Why did you quit this thing that you felt like God told you to do? Yeah. And I knew he was right when he said it. And so I went back to my youth pastor and I said, hey, I apologize. That was wrong. I should have received that. I'd love to finish out the year. And he said one of the best things for me at the time, which is basically like, hey, I love you. But that's it. It's done. And so here I am. I just turned 19.
Bold, which I'm grateful he did that. But that's bold that you're the pastor's son.
Exactly.
Much respect. I appreciate that.
Yeah, much respect to him, because my dad, the senior pastor, was his boss. And so to tell the boss's son, who the boss had sent me back to go try to do it. And he basically looked at me and said, no, I love you, but that's it. That was bold, but it was good and it was needed. And my dad stood by the decision and said, yeah, if that's what he feels. And so here I am. I'm 19 years old, had a lot of ambitions in my life. I'm unemployed. I quit my job. I'm not going to college, not in an internship. So I started pursuing what I was passionate about, which is gaming. And I started pursuing it wholeheartedly and made some great strides in Subway Surfer and Temple Run and Call of Duty and all that. And I just knew, though, and I started just like every behavior that I was compromising in the internship just got worse. I started just really dabbling in the things of the world and really, if I was in the middle when I joined the internship, I was now starting to walk the other way.
You're a little girl crazy.
I was a little girl crazy, yep. Cool. And now I'm only crazy about one girl. That's right.
Actually, 3 girls.
My daughters, too. Yeah, that's right.
And your mom.
And
4
the list keeps,
He's
my
a
sister,
He's a
yeah.
mom is
It's just, yeah. Thank you.
John's crazy about 5 girls.
Yeah. Please never say that. Yeah. Yeah. So here I am, unemployed, kind of going in the wrong direction. And my parents come to me. I still live in their house, rent-free at the time, because they were supporting me because I quit my job. They had agreed to do that for a little bit. And they were going to a conference. Whoa. They were going to a conference, and my dad came and knocked on my room and said, hey, he said, we're going to a conference and you're coming with us. It's in Texas, and it's in 2 weeks or whatever. And I fought him on it. I was like, Dad, I do not want to go to this conference. Which is so funny looking back. I literally had nothing going on. Yeah. Like it doesn't encroach on anything important.
You're not working.
And yet my heart, yeah, right. Exactly. I got things to do. And, but my heart was slowly getting hardened. And so I'm so grateful to the Lord that he actually like caught me before it was like fully hardened, because you can resist the Lord so much that your heart just becomes harder and harder. The Bible says he who isolates himself seeks his own desires and rages against all wise counsel. So first step when you isolate yourself is you end up seeking your own desires. You end up falling into things. Second step, if you keep doing that long enough, is you begin to rage against all wise counsel. Anything that's wisdom and godly starts to offend you and upset you, and you can't even hear it. And so I'm grateful to the Lord that he, through his mercy, caught me while I was on that route, but not hardened yet fully. And so he basically said, you live in my house, you don't work, you don't go to school, you're going to this conference, right? Everything reasonable for a dad to say. And so I went to this conference, and when I went there reluctantly, but when I got in there, I just had this feeling inside where I determined, I said, you know what, if I'm going to be here and I'm going to have to sit through session after session, I might as well listen and learn something. And I heard a testimony. One guy got up there and shared a testimony that completely, like in a moment, my life something in my heart just shifted through the Holy
Wow.
Spirit. And the testimony went something like, it was a pastor who had been a pastor for many years, and he talked about how when he was 18 or 19 years old, maybe a little older, maybe actually like 20, 21, how he was young and married and an alcoholic, and like a fervent alcoholic. Like he couldn't make it 24 hours without alcohol.
Wow.
And he was just full of rage, not a believer. And him and his young wife stumbled into a church, ended up starting to go there, and the pastor started to help him with alcoholism.
Wow.
And so they started to work with him. And he said after like 2 months, he made it a full day. Like 2 months of working, he finally made it one day. And he called his pastors drunk. Like he had slammed a bunch of beers, and called him and said like, hey, like, you never believe it. Yesterday? Not at all. Like, I didn't drink at all. Like, and that was a big thing. And they celebrated with him. Fast forward about 6 months later, he just finally threw in the towel and said, I'm done. Like, I just can't do it anymore.
Wow.
I've really tried, and that's it. You know, I can't get free from this. And he said, and this is, again, I'm listening to a minister now who's been married and who God's used in major ways, who's been alcohol-free for decades now. I'm listening to him share this story, and he said, as a young man, he got to that place where he threw in the towel, and he said his pastors said when he called them and said, I'm done, I can't do it, I'm sorry. They said, where are you? He said, at home. And his pastors drove over to his house and said, we'll be right there. They got on their knees in front of him with tears in their eyes, and they said, don't you quit on us. We will get you there. You just stick with us. And I remember sitting in that seat being so touched, because the way that I saw myself in the story, you know, sometimes you see yourself in the story.
Yeah.
I didn't see myself as the alcoholic. I actually saw myself as the person who's supposed to go help those people. And I was so beneath that. I just knew I'm so bound up with lust. I'm so like lazy. I'm so not being who I need to be. But that just renewed in me this fire to be that person for people, the person that won't give up on people. And so, I decided.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that was the moment that I remember sitting there, and I just knew, God, I have to change, because I knew he had a purpose for me to be that kind of a person that just doesn't let people go. And that's always been my heart, not perfect at it, but that's my heart. And I knew it, but I knew that there was no way to get there in the lifestyle I was in. So came back, decided, God, I'm going to give you 3 weeks of everything I've got.
Yeah.
So I put away the video games. I told the girls, plural, that I had been kind of texting back and forth with and talking with,
and your sister and
my mom, my mom and my
Actually,
sister.
including myself too. I was a part of that.
Yeah.
Those texts.
Really? What?
Yeah, actually,
Yeah,
at the
I
time.
was. Yeah, 'cause
She was-
I was. So
Yeah.
I.
You're one of the groupies?
Yeah,
At the
I
time,
was
yeah.
interning with his mom at the district, and so I was just graduating Life Pacific College, and then he was just graduated high school. I didn't really text him until he graduated high school, because that was just illegal
Yeah.
for
Yep.
me to talk to.
But she wanted to.
She wanted to, though. Actually, the first time we met really fast, too,
babe.
I always say
Come
this is
on,
when
babe.
the hook went in her mouth was the first time we met. Then I just had to reel in, because when we first met, I wasn't wearing a shirt. Okay.
Nice.
It was at my parents' house. I was 17 in wrestling. I was in
Solid.
great shape, much similar, like my current
To
physique
now.
I
He
was
had a
in.
six-pack back then.
Back then.
He did have
has
one.
a six-pack.
He does have a
Yeah.
six-pack.
Yes. Thank you. Of something.
Under the
yeah.
dad bod.
Under the dad bod, way deep. You just can't. But so I guess my mom
fair.
had asked her to
Bring
intern.
it back. Hashtag bring back.
Oh, come on. What is this?
We gotta let him go. We gotta let him cook.
I guess my mom had asked her to intern with us, with her at the district office that she worked at for Foursquare. And I didn't know this. And so it's like 8:30 in the morning. I'm like 17. It's a Saturday, I think. I'm just waking up. I hear a knock at the door. I think it's like, I don't know, the pool guy maybe or something. So I open the door in like PJ shorts, no shirt, and bedhead. And I open the door, and when I open the door, it's this beautiful young lady, this young college girl. I'm like 17, right? And I'm just like, oh, hi. And Marlene's obviously blown away, right? She's in shock and awe.
Can't even
No.
speak.
No, she's just like, hi, I'm here for your mom, I think, or whatever. And I remember I said, okay, let me go get her. And I closed her. I immediately went up to my mom. I was like, Mom, don't you ever invite a college-age girl over here without telling me again. Like, you need to warn me, Mom. I just opened the door in PJ shorts, no shirt, and bedhead. Yeah. And so anyway, I always say that's when the hook went in. And then
That's crazy.
No, I'm just kidding. But
No.
so at the time when I gave up everything for the 21 days, she was a girl that I had kind of been texting and flirting with and all that stuff, amongst several. At the time, I was just bound up with lust and all that stuff. And
But you always said that you never categorized me in that.
I didn't,
Yeah.
no. Because Mar Mar was the real deal before I was the real deal. So
Yeah.
a lot of people that don't know our story wouldn't know that, but she'd been the real deal since she was a little girl. I mean, she just stuck with the Lord, and she was doing purity conference. Yeah, actually, you share a little bit about like you growing up and
You can finish. You want to finish your story,
sure.
or do you want me
Sure.
to interject now?
No, I can finish first. So, so 21 days, I set everything aside. Halfway through the 21 days, I told the Lord, I can't do it. I said, God, I quit. I was trying to do things right, and I just fell. Like I had told my friends, like, I'm not going to hang out for these 3 weeks. I'm just going to seek God. And I ended up hanging out with my friends. I think I ended up texting a girl or something, and we started talking again and all this. And it wasn't her. Yeah. And anyway, God like just intervened. And there's so many details, I won't take the time, but God basically grabbed my heart and said, don't give up on me. He used a teaching to do that. And I was on my last legs, but that just filled me with hope. And the last half of those 21 days, I can't even express how much my life just changed. I just became a new person through his presence and through him. In the beginning of the 21 days, praying for 10 minutes straight felt like a lifetime. By the end of it, I was praying for 2-3 hours sometimes, and they would just leave me in his presence. And so God told me very specifically on, I think it was day 19, to be a youth leader. That's what he was calling me to as my next step. And didn't know how to do that. I asked God, do I just go apply at churches? And I felt like he said, he's got it. And later that day, I ran into the campus pastors of our Lake Elsinore campus. They asked me to come and be the youth leader. And they said God had just been putting them on their heart. I wept like a baby. I knew it was God.
Wow.
And that's when God really grabbed me. And when I prayed about who should be on my youth team, she was one of the names that I felt like God said.
Wow.
And so before I get into the marriage story, why don't you?
And I think that's so cool, if I may add. Oh,
She had a mouthful of water.
Water drink.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think that's so powerful, bro, because through all that, through you slowly walking away, hardening your heart, the Lord pursued after you.
Yeah.
Right. And growing up in a church home, you have your parents, right? They're pastors, and you're constantly in front of the Word of God. But
Yeah.
you're listening to it, but you're not letting it
Right.
listen and sink into you. But
Right.
the heart of God and his sovereignty to run after you at a conference and to change your life and to constantly prove himself
So right.
worthy
Yep.
and his love for you. I think that's so beautiful, bro.
That's right. And he does that through his mercy. He'll give opportunities. But he doesn't make us. We have to respond to the opportunities. And
It's true.
there were many opportunities that he had given me before that I didn't respond to. And but this was a big one. And I just knew inside the route that I was going. I just knew this is
It won't last.
yeah, not that he wouldn't give me another opportunity, but I knew it's about to start really costing me in my life. I just
Wow.
knew that if I keep going down this road with my decisions, that God can restore anything, but there's costs that come later in life. And I just knew it's about to start costing me in some big ways. And so I'm grateful that he snatched me up and used my parents in that scenario to drag me to a conference and then to speak to me in that way. I'm very, very blessed and grateful.
Oh, praise God, bro. And
Yeah.
now look at what your yes did. And being able to minister, you have your kids, and you have been able to lead and pastor people and just sing. We were talking about this in the last podcast, but on the other side of your yes is people's lives, right?
Yep.
And at the end of it, when you're in the throne room of God and God looks at you and said, like, man, like, look at what your yes did. And you see
Yeah.
all the people with you in heaven. But I do not want to get to the throne room of God and God being like, man, like, look at what you missed out on.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, look at what cost you.
Yeah.
Like, you
Yeah.
could have done this, this, and this. But you waited and you wanted to do your own thing and you trusted yourself rather than trusting me.
Yeah.
And just look at what it cost you.
Yeah.
But
And I think that's something people wouldn't know necessarily about me or us is like the life that we have now, which we feel so blessed. Like even be
Yeah,
able
it's
to
true.
be in ministry, it's a blessing. It's
It
not
is.
something we take for granted. And having the kids and the relationship that we have, which is not perfect, but beautiful and loving and faithful and all that, like I was this close to missing it. Like this life that God had for me, I was so close to missing it. And I don't know that people would know that intuitively, but I feel like even like for people watching, like you don't know what's on the other side of your yes, and you don't know what he has for you, but you can listen to people that have said yes, that have said it's worth it.
It's true.
And it is, and it's not always worth it immediately. That's part of the hard part is there's sowing and reaping, which takes time. You plant, you water, then you wait, right?
Yeah.
And you keep watering it and then you watch it grow, but it's not always immediate, but over time, it always, serving the Lord always
Yeah,
ends
and
up
faith takes
better.
action.
Yep.
If God puts an opportunity in front of us, we need to take it
That's
and
right.
not just
Yep.
wait on the Lord and just expect something to happen. But I
Yep.
think that's so powerful. Mara, please share.
Well, when I was 1 year old.
The golden child, the purity leading. I know he mentioned you led purity conferences and you went to college and you were on fire. There was never a time where you really walked away from God, but please share like what God did in your life.
Yeah. I used to think I didn't have a testimony. I used to think that, I would hear all of these, stories or, people of like the lives of, God taking them out of these hard lives. And I used to be like, God, why don't I have like the testimony? I don't. And, when I took OSL level 1 about God's love. And I remember he like spoke so clearly to me and he just said, Marlene, like, because I asked him like, God, why did you find me when I was so young? Like, why? Like, what's my story? He's like, Marlene, like you have a testimony. He said, like, he said, I found you when you were young because I knew you were going to love me back. He like spoke that so clearly to me. And it was like a word just like that. Yeah. It was like just a beautiful word that really blessed my heart. But he just like, I had felt like the feelings of like, in the Bible when when Israel would like reject God, I would feel his pain. Like I would feel his hurt. I would feel like as a husband, Hosea, the Lord really used the book of Hosea in my life to really just like show me his heart for his people. And I would just feel like God's like jealous heart for people, but also like what it would do to him when people like would walk with him but then like forgot about him or like weren't faithful to him. And I would just feel like what his heart would feel. And so as a little girl, like I fell in love with him. And like it was,
which is so rare. Like you don't see that. Like you had the fear of the Lord in you at a young age and you were able to really like just be like you understood God's pain for his people.
Yeah,
I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, and it was birthed honestly, and this is like what you guys are talking about. Like you don't know what's behind somebody's yes, because my mom and dad, they have a story that my dad was an alcoholic. My mom was pregnant when she was 15 years old. Their story, some of the things my dad hasn't been fully shared, I think because of how much shame of things that he was exposed to and things that he did. And my older brothers that are 15 years older than me, they grew up and they had a different life. So they grew up seeing my dad drunk. They grew up seeing, the bondages and just how it was how the drinking was destroying my family. Yeah. And so but that's what my family was raised. I mean, their parents and their family, that they just grew up, you do drugs or you drink and all these things. But when I was born, that's when my parents gave their hearts to Jesus, and there was a couple that discipled them for 1 year, and their lives were completely changed. So my dad, like in an instant, was freed from alcohol and hasn't had one sip since I was born. So every time it's my birthday, we celebrate also like how many years he's been sober. And also like of them giving their heart to Jesus. And so so I always, even to this day, like I'll call them and I'll thank them and I'll say, Mom and Dad, like, thank you for saying yes to Jesus. Thank you for saying yes, because
there's a generational
effect. Because it's generational now.
And your kids.
Yeah, and my kids now, and and too at a young age I was able to be raised up and just with the Holy Spirit, and I was able to be raised, and honestly, like where my heart were even to the pain, I would feel God's pain is because my older brothers, they weren't walking with Jesus, and I would see what they were going through. So as like a 5-year-old, I would like run to the altar and like cry out for their salvation. Like 5 or 6 years, I remember as a little girl, like going, and just every single time I was at church, it was to go up to pray for my brothers, because I had such a heart for them to know Jesus and to be saved and be freed from the things that they were going through. And as a young girl, I could see their lives, and I understood like that God was not walking with God. And so I saw destruction come into their life, and I, as their sister, because I love them, I wanted to help them, and I knew that God was the only one that could save them. And so from a young age, even too, he put a heart from people for me to like, I have just have a heart for people to know him. And I feel like that was birthed in my own secret place from my own brothers, you know. So that's where it was birthed. And just I just experienced first love with Jesus. Like, it was just me. It just felt like me and him. And
you were faithful. Like, you were faithful to the Lord the entire time.
Yeah, right? I wasn't perfect, but I mean, in school too, like, my school was my mission field. Like, when I was even in elementary, middle school, junior high, like high school, so cool. Like, to me, and I went to a Christian school, but like, it was experienced, again, his heart, that there were so many people around me that knew about God, but they weren't in relationship with him.
And so you started doing purity conferences
when I was in high school
for young ladies while still in high school. Purity conferences, both to talk about what it means to be pure before God, but and also the restoration of God and how God can restore. And so that's what she's doing while I'm kind of going through this little funky phase. This is who she is. And one of the craziest, in a good way, I shouldn't even call it crazy because it's how it ought to be, but one of the most amazing things about her story is that she started as a young girl and just didn't deviate. And again, not perfect, but she just stuck with it. And something that I've noticed growing up in a church that my parents started when I was 5, is it's crazy the amount of people that you see at one point walking with God that end up walking away. And some of them are shocking. Like, some of them you would never, ever expect that person to walk away from the Lord because they're just so solid and they're so on it. But that's why a healthy fear of God, to remember that each one of us are responsible to make sure that we are continuing to walk with the Lord. Even the Bible says a man of understanding will attain wise counsel. Sometimes we wait for wise counsel to come to us, but we're responsible before God to go get wise counsel and to attain it. We're responsible in our own hearts to not be offended and to not walk away because of that, or to use that sometimes. And it's not because there aren't real opportunities. There are sometimes incredibly terrible things that happen to people, and yet we're responsible through those terrible things to still not walk away from the Lord and what he's saying, and not to relate everything people do or say to him. And so that's one of the most amazing things that I've always respected about her, is how she's just stuck with it and how she's just refused to back down. And so I truly feel so blessed with Marlene. She's so awesome. Anyone who knows her off this podcast too knows she's so funny, like so much fun. We laugh so much.
You're like top 5.
No,
she really is. No, she's hilarious.
It's unintentional.
She's hilarious. Some of it is, that's true, but some of it's not. Some of it's like you're just hilarious.
It's so true.
So I feel so blessed.
So you mentioned purity, and I think it's a great segue into kind of the topics that we want to discuss. I think singleness and being able to walk in purity is often neglected. I think in our society, it's like, go to the party, get drunk, hook up. We live in such a society like that. So how would you advise a young lady, and how would you advise a young man to walk in purity and to honor the Lord? And what does that decision do, and how does it affect your life moving forward, even with the future spouse?
I can start. I mean, I would just say, like, when the Lord revealed like that to me as like a young girl, or even in junior high and high school and college, like just when you're in love with Jesus, like when you're truly in love with him, there's just something that happens in your heart that you want to honor him. And so even as like as a young girl, like the Lord put a passion in my heart for my husband. I didn't know who my husband would be yet, but you know, as a high schooler, like I had like would write letters to my future husband. Like, I actually gave it to him on our wedding day, but I had like letters and letters. But the Lord, like, he began to put a passion in my heart to just save my heart for my husband, but also just to like be pure before the Lord. And he really, like, as my heart was to like be a bride someday, like how the Bible talks about how like we are his bride.
The bride of Christ.
We're the bride of Christ, like the marriage of the Lamb. Like, he's coming back for his bride. And he gave me revelation of that at a really young age. And so, like, even as I was preparing myself, you know, as to be a bride of Christ, like, he was like also like I feel like preparing me to be a bride, because really marriage, I believe, is a tangible picture of our relationship with Christ. Right. And even, I don't know if we'll talk about marriage later, but like there is a dying to yourself. Yeah. There's a laying down of your life for your spouse, for your family.
It's true.
And so purity, like it, if people may feel like, like how do I do that? Like, what does that look like? And I think it's just really you're being in love with him, because when you're in love with him and when your eyes are just like locked in on him, then like his heart becomes your heart. And like, that's good. And even just having a heart of like, man, like, Lord, like prepare my heart even for your coming. Like, there's a purity that he's doing. And I think even I'm seeing it like in the church, like he is like purifying his bride.
That's right.
And he's calling a people for his own that are set apart, that is not like everybody else. Like Jesus is coming back, and he's looking for people that are saying like, I'm gonna lay it down. I'm gonna lay my own desires, and I'm gonna live my life. Doesn't mean I'm gonna be perfect. It doesn't mean I'm gonna do it all right, but it's just this heart posture of God, like my heart is yours. Yeah. My heart is yours. Like my mind is yours. My thoughts are yours. My everything is yours. And so there's just something with purity, even as in a relationship, that that really mirrors the heart of God, that we can carry into our earthly relationships, even with our our husband or our boyfriend and girlfriend, that we're honoring them. And that's the question that I would ask myself. I remember in college, like, and I would especially ask this, like, Lord, how can like I honor my future husband today? Like, I don't even know who he is yet, but like how can I honor?
You see why I say I'm so blessed? Like God bless me.
No,
so
but
much.
I just would ask myself, and even when it comes to like modesty, right? Like the way that we dress, things like that. True. Like I wasn't like all about like dress like a nun, right? I think there's a way to like dress super swaggy, cute and fashionable. Yeah. Lauren is like one of the most fashionable people I know. I love her fashion.
Lauren is swaggy.
She's swag. No, but she's swag with sweatpants and the thing.
Sweatpants swag.
Yes. Yeah. But so I was all about like dressing nice and like stylish, but like I remember like before I would go out of my dorm room, I would ask my roommate like, hey, like, is this like an outfit that's like honoring to like myself, but also to my future husband, or like just I want to honor, like I would ask my roommate so that cool. Like, but I knew that like to live this life, like sometimes you're gonna have to like do things that like feel extreme, but it's worth it. Like,
I think that's so interesting, because on the men's perspective, I can understand, like John's like, I'm so blessed, because withholding yourself and honoring yourself and not like just putting yourself out there is like really cool. I think we
it's
like
countercultural.
Really, it's countercultural. It's like, because the girl is thinking like, I need to put myself out there. I need attention and draw attention to myself, and then I'll be accepted, and then people will like me. Right. When in reality, in the kingdom of God, it's completely shifted. It's completely opposite of that. But it's like, hey, I need to dress a certain way that's honoring for my future husband, right? Yeah. And being on the receiving end of that, like, I'm sure it blesses you so much.
Oh my gosh, so amazing. It's hard to describe how blessed I feel being married to this woman, and that God restored. Even like, so our stories were different in this way. Like, she had that perspective. She really owned that and all that. Me, I had to be restored. I wasn't a virgin when we got married. She was. I wasn't. By the way, I said that one time on stage, like when I was preaching, I just shared my testimony. Were you in there? Somebody legitimately gasped. I said, God restored me because I wasn't a virgin when we had gotten married, and they go, but like it wasn't like it wasn't like a playful, no, like if you know the person, she was genuinely thrown back and taken aback. So and I looked and I was like, I'm so sorry. Okay, I'm so sorry. But yeah, so God had to restore me, and he does, and he can, and there's no way that you can go so far that he can't restore. It's one of the things I love about the Lord. He's just a God of restoration. So there's purity. There's also restored purity that he can bring in restoration. And so I feel blessed. Like, she gave me the husband journal on our wedding day that she had been writing for years.
But you didn't read right away.
I know. I was thinking
that one.
When you shared it,
you didn't read it right away?
No, it took him like months. I know.
It took me I think it took me over a year. It was just
a year.
You know what it was?
So
okay.
sad.
I don't know. I valued so much like the thought of it. Like, the thought was so beautiful. I was like, oh, that's so amazing. And then I was like, yeah, I really will read that. Like, man, that's so awesome.
Was it like a bunch of them? Like a bunch
It was
of
like a
letters?
husband
So it
journal. It
was
was like
like
a
a-
150-page journal
But
that she had
but
just
the
written
last-
notes to
I
me.
get that.
Yeah, see, it wasn't like a
Yeah.
note.
But
It wasn't like a
Over
letter.
year that he
It's not like
Every
one
year.
paper. It's like it's a
I
book.
like
It's a book.
no, it's a journal.
It's like a 150-page
I get
journal
that.
of letters. See,
Maybe
and the
not a
last
year,
the
but I
the
get
last
the delay.
page was like it was just enough pages. It landed on our wedding that the last page I wrote my vows in it. And so
No, that's great. No, that's so good.
Jared doesn't like that.
No,
Jared doesn't respect
I
that. No, just kidding.
no. And so yeah. Anyways, I guess
But
I
when
had,
I-
I expected that he would like read it like within like
like
a
on the
month.
honeymoon.
Yeah,
No, like
yeah.
a month. But anyways, he ended up
When
reading it.
I read it,
and he
though,
wept.
after a
so.
cool year. When I read it, I wept like a baby.
Wow.
I did, and I was like, Lord, I can't believe you gave me this woman.
Fun fact too, in the journal, there's one entry that says, "Dear future husband, I'm about to meet a woman named Kimberly Dirmann today."
I love that.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
Isn't that
Isn't that so cool?
wild?
That's my mom.
That's
Did I
yeah,
ever
just
tell
like
you
us
that I wrote letters too?
No.
Not as many as you, but I have like 4 or 5 that I wrote.
I didn't
Oh,
know
that's
And
so
that.
cool.
one of them I wrote like, I don't know where you are. Like
Yeah.
you could be next door or you could be across the country. And my boyfriend lives
Right,
on
yeah.
the other side of my
Next door.
elementary
Yeah.
school.
Oh,
Really
wow.
next door.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
crazy.
Yeah. So
That's
it's
so cool.
it's wild. So I would encourage you watching.
Yeah.
You can write future husband.
So just to bring it close to the story of what happened. So at 19, so we went out and did youth ministry together. At that point, God had deeply changed me in those 21 days. And so I had wanted to get married my whole life. I remember telling my mom at 12, like, I can't wait to get married. I have so much love to give and all that. And then lust creeps in as a teenager and it becomes impure, even the desires and all that. But God had so radically changed me that through youth ministry, we started to fall in love. We just did. But we had a conversation about it. And what I had told her is I said, I love you. I have these feelings for you. But I know that the Lord is not wanting me to jump back into a relationship or to jump into a relationship.
Because there's restoration.
Yeah, there was
And that's
restoration.
happening.
There's
And-
things he was trying to build in me.
And also for me, I had to pray because I had just graduated Life Pacific College, and the plan was always I would go back home to the Bay Area which I was born and
wow.
raised. And he called me, and at that time we were starting to have feelings, but
Well,
I
I
knew.
think your feelings came when I opened the door at my parents'
No,
house,
yeah,
right?
you've been having feelings.
Yeah,
Okay.
you've
Yeah.
been holding him back because of
The
legality.
6
Legalities. No,
Because he was
but
17.
Because I was 17.
yeah, but I remember that when he called me, I remember.
At this point, I was 19.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, he was 19. I remember having to pray though and ask the Lord because I knew that I couldn't make a decision based off of just my feelings of even like my starting to like him. I knew that I had to know like, God,
This is from
is
God,
this from you?
not your emotions.
Like I had to separate those two because I didn't want to make a decision based on the feelings
Or
because
just impulse.
impulse because at that point I wasn't fully sure yet if he was going to be my husband.
Yeah.
But I also knew I had to lay that down to know if that never happened, would I still say yes to this assignment that he was asking me to partner with him. So
Yeah.
once I settled that in my heart, I knew, okay, God, like even if nothing was ever to happen between me and him, but are you calling me to go? And I felt the yes,
Yeah.
then I did the ministry with him. But then in that's when we like fell in love in
Yeah.
youth ministry.
And so I had a conversation with her and said, basically, either this is of the Lord or it's not. I said, so if this is of the Lord and if God speaks to us and says that this is him and to move forward, then we'll do that for marriage. And it would be not just to get to know each other, to see if we like each other. And not that that's always wrong, but I knew the season we're in, that's not what I was needing or about. And so it was either that we felt like the Lord said, this is for real for marriage, or I had said, or we'll just be friends forever. And that's it. And, fast forward not too long, the Lord did end up, thank God. I was at a Bible study one night, and after the Bible study was wrapping up, people were closing, like one person was like sharing their final thoughts. And while they were sharing their final thoughts, I felt like the Lord said, it's time. And I knew what he was talking about with Marlene.
Wow.
And I struggled to keep it together in that Bible study. I was like overjoyed.
Just smiling.
And I'm just cheesing. And they all left the Bible study, and there I am sitting in this living room, just on like sitting on the floor with my back against the couch, like, God, is this really
You're
you?
like
And
laying on your stomach, kicking your legs. like
like twiddling my feet. Yeah. And I felt like I asked the Lord, is this really you? And I felt like the Lord said yes. And so the first person I called wasn't her. It was my parents,
Wow.
who I trust, who's God's put in my life as
So good.
leaders to me, as wise counsel. And so I called my parents and I said, hey, this is what I'm feeling. I'm feeling like God's saying that now's the time to move forward in a relationship for marriage with Marlene. And so I told them, and I meant it. I said, you guys pray about it. And I said, whatever you say, that's what I'll do. I said, if you guys don't feel like it's time or don't feel like it's of the Lord, then I won't do anything about this. And they prayed, and my mom was like, she prayed, and she was like pretty fast, like, you know, and my dad was like,
Jerry, at first, it wasn't like a yes right away.
And it wasn't that
because of how quick like your life changed.
I think part of it had to be how quick it was.
Yeah, I think
part of it was like, this is such a big decision. Like he just wanted to make sure. My mom apparently had like already been feeling that and knowing, but my dad, he hadn't been focused on it, so I don't know if it just threw him off, but I mean, when we say it took long, it took like 15 minutes, okay, of him like walking around the room. But
he hears from God.
He does.
Yes.
But so he's walking around for like 15 minutes, and my mom's like basically, you know, like, hey, like I think it's a yes, and my dad's just like, Lord, give wisdom. And then after about 15 minutes, he goes, you know what? He goes, I feel good about it.
Wow.
And so then I immediately called I immediately called her parents, who I had just met for the first time 2 weeks earlier.
You only met them one time.
And her dad asked me 2 weeks earlier.
And you FaceTime them with your shirt off. And
just to make sure that I got him. Yeah. No, I had only met her parents 2 weeks earlier, and her dad pulled me aside because he had known that there was like some feelings happening. She had talked to him about it, and he pulled me aside and basically said, hey, just want to ask what your intentions are with my daughter. And I basically told him he's a man of God. He loves the Lord too. And so I told him, I said, listen, I love your daughter. I said, but I know that God's not calling me to just be in a relationship just because it's fun and enjoyable, but that the next relationship I'm supposed to be in is for marriage. And so the place that I'm at is either the Lord's going to speak and I'm going to feel like it's for marriage, in which case I'll call you, or not, in which case we'll just always be friends. So I called him and I told them the same thing I told my parents. I said, pray about it. And I felt like I was supposed to say, whatever you say, we'll go with. And
which they felt like so honored because that, you know, with my family, like this was the first time like that this was doing it the right way.
Yeah.
And so it just blessed them so much.
And the Bible doesn't always say to obey your parents. It says children obey your parents, but it does always say to honor them. So even when you're an adult, that doesn't mean you have to obey everything your parents say, and yet there's a way to honor your parents. Absolutely. And so
that's a whole nother podcast.
That is a whole nother podcast. Yeah. Even for young adults, understanding what it means to honor your parents, even if your parents are flawed in many ways or not following the Lord, what it means to honor them. And God desires for us to honor our parents, even if they're not right, or even if they're not living right. There's a way that you don't have to do everything they say and yet honor them in the process.
Because it honors him.
Yeah, it
and
does.
He honors us.
Who honor.
Yeah. And so they said yes. And so anyway, so when we started dating, we went into dating. We knew on our first date. So I surprised her with some flowers and with a sign that said it's time. And she knew what that meant. She knew that it didn't mean it's time to just date. She knew that meant that I believe, and she was kind of already on board, that we're supposed to be married, like God's calling us to join together in marriage. And so from the time we started dating, we just knew that we're supposed to be together. We knew that this is for marriage. And so after about 2.5 months, one of the things that we struggled with, I mean, what most people would consider mildly, we did not consider mildly, which is like, boundaries, like physically, like we actually, not a lot of people know this too, but some people ask,
like, what are you about to say?
No, just that some people will ask, sometimes they're like, so, kissing, like, what was your guys' policy about kissing, like when you started dating and all that. But we actually had our first kiss 2 weeks before we started dating, which not a lot of people know. Which was all her. Yep.
Yeah.
2 weeks before.
Where was it? It was in Corona.
It was Easter Sunday, 2014.
Cold Stone. No, we were eating ice cream or something.
What?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Who initiated you?
Of course.
She. Okay.
He called them. He called them cherry pickers.
What?
A cherry pick.
That's what he said. You were like, you know what he said? That's what he led with. Do you know what a cherry picker is? And then he just, and it's just like a little kiss right here.
It's like on the corner of your mouth. And one time I kissed the corner of her mouth and she just turned
and
embraced it. No.
For real?
Mar, was that your first kiss?
It was not my first kiss. No.
Mar.
Like she wasn't
gosh,
perfect. She
wasn't
perfect.
I'm learning so much.
Oh no. Her, when we first got married for like 2 years.
I had a boyfriend when I was 16.
Got it.
Yeah. When we first got married for like 2 years, whenever we would go visit her parents, the Wi-Fi password was actually, I was going to say his name, but maybe I shouldn't.
No.
Yeah. But the Wi-Fi password
What's his
was
name?
her ex's name and Marlene. Like, I'm going to say his name's David. It's not actually David, but the Wi-Fi password was David and Marlene. And so
Yeah,
for
I don't know- I
years,
don't know
I'm
why
coming
my
and I'm
dad
like,
did
we've been
that.
married now for years. We have our daughter Riley,
still David
and I'm
and
typing in David and
Yeah,
Marlene
it
to
was.
log
My
into the
dad just
Wi-Fi.
changed it though.
He changed it. He changed
it.
it. Yeah, a while ago now.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
yeah. So we actually had our first kiss, and then we're like, we shouldn't. Come on, like let's refocus
Yeah.
and all that.
And that was yeah.
But the point. So what I'm saying is this. So dating, we were kissing and and all that, and sometimes hands start to wander. And again, what most people in the world would consider like, hey, no big deal, you're not having sex. But to us, we knew like this is not it. We're not called to operate this way. And so
Especially for us, we were youth pastors in that season, so we really, and it was actually really beautiful that the youth, they got to see us as friends, but then they got to see our whole story. So we it was just this beautiful family. It felt like, but they got to we really invited them into our lives.
Wow.
To where they saw us dating, they saw us engaged, they saw us married when we started having babies, and
right.
and so it was just like we knew too that we wanted to be an example to them, and
That's really good.
be
Yeah.
a love approach.
And so when we started dating, we knew that that boundaries, we were setting tight boundaries, but we were struggling. And so we knew we were supposed to be married. So we're like, let's just do it. So 2.5 months later, I proposed. And then we were engaged for 2 months. In fact, her dad, who is such a good planner, he's like one of the most on it people I know. Like one time, actually, we were going to go to the lake, and he said, I think he's like, okay, we'll leave by 7 a.m. for the lake. This is us and the kids, and we were going to go on like a little vacation. And
My dad will probably watch this later.
yeah,
just
which is great.
FYI.
That's awesome.
Hi, Dad.
Hey, Dad. He said we'll leave by 7 or whatever to go to the lake. This was years ago, and I said okay. So I go to sleep, and at 4:50 a.m. I get a knock on the door of our bedroom. Like, all right, let's get up and go. And I'm like, wait, I thought we said 7. And it's like 4:50. We ended up leaving, I think, at like 5:20 or 5:30.
Wow.
But he's just like on it. Like if he says it's like always early, it's
Early is on
prepared.
time.
Early is on time. He's very much like that, and so very responsible. I look up to him in so many ways with responsibility and all that. And so anyway, so when we first got engaged, and we tell
Throws
him
off.
it's August,
For
okay,
sure.
it's August 4th when we get married, when we get engaged, and he asks, so like when are you guys thinking the wedding? And so we say October. He goes, okay, that gives me like a little over a year to prepare and to make sure finances are good. And all of that, and then
So no
and then he
dad.
goes, I think I can, basically I think I can work with that. Like, I think that's okay. And then we go,
This October.
we were
Dad.
talking about this October, and it threw him off.
It's like,
this October, Marlene. He stopped looking at me and immediately looks at Marlene. Marlene, you know that this means that your wedding is not going to be as big and extravagant as if you want to give me more time to set money aside for it. And he said, I'm gonna have to think about this one. I'm gonna have to ponder it. And
Which
so
is so fair.
it's
For him to
2
think,
months.
yeah,
Oh yeah,
which
it's
is so fair.
It's super fair. So we totally understood. It's so
Yeah.
fair.
But
And
he totally supported us, and
He
we
did.
had our dream
awesome.
wedding.
We did.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
We did. Yeah, it was beautiful.
10
He came
years
back
this
and
year.
said, hey, if this is what you guys want to do, he felt good about it with
Yeah.
the Lord and felt good about it. And so that was
Yeah.
August 4th. We got engaged. October 4th, we got
Got married,
Wow.
and
Wow,
4 kids
exactly.
later, here we are.
Here we are. Yeah.
I think there's so much wisdom in your guys' story. The fact that you were not led by your emotions in the beginning, but you really sought the Lord on, God, what do you want? Like, your kingdom come, your will be done. And really setting aside your preferences and allowing the Lord to lead you. And ultimately it led to what you desired and what you wanted so badly.
Yeah, and really quick if I interject, and before that I had to there's also a letting go, because you asked if that was my first kiss, and I had a boyfriend, and I truly loved him, and he truly loved me. I know I did.
I cannot even imagine that.
I did.
know.
But the
blasphemous.
Lord, like, every time I would come home from college, we would reconnect. But the Lord had told me, like, you have to let him go. Because
Wow.
he's like, I'm not going to. Because I knew in my heart he wasn't my husband. I knew.
David, yeah.
I loved
Can't believe
him.
him.
Yeah.
Actually,
this
David,
one,
this one was a different one than
This
David.
one's a different one than David.
Different than the Wi-Fi password guy. I mean, not perfect. But
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
But I think
Anyways, there was a letting
No,
go.
it's
I had to let go. Once I let go completely and, like, surrender that to the Lord, then that's when he came.
And even for you, John, being able to understand, like, I need to walk out a process of healing and allowing myself. I'm reminded of the scripture, how does a young man cleanse his way? By taking heed according to your
Yeah.
word. Like, you were in a process of my life just radically changed, and I need to cling to God's word. I need to cling to him, the person of Jesus,
That's right.
and allow him to reconcile a lot of the things that were lost. And you being able to understand in that moment, not being like, oh, great, like, let's jump in and let's date. This is going to be awesome. She's cute. I'm cute. Like, let's go. Like, let's go for it. But you allowing yourself to process and wait on the Lord and allow him to dictate when.
Mm-hmm.
And then he led you. And I thought it was so beautiful. Even just, and I think the biggest thing too, like as people are listening to this and watching this, understanding that they're not going to compare it to your story. Everybody's story is different, right? Some people,
and ours is pretty unique.
and some people get married quick, some people wait years, right? And they do it and they honor the Lord doing it. But I think being able to take the nuggets of wisdom that you guys were able to share in your story is the way to go about it. Honoring each other's parents, even just the fact of like the Lord confirmed it after that Bible study, and you were like, man, like, let me call not Marlene, but let me call my parents. Like in the multitude of counsel, there's safety. And even just making sure, because we could think we hear from God and our counsel thinks, hey, I think you should wait. I think you should wait on it and honor that. Right.
And who you're gonna marry is like the most important decision aside from
giving your
life to Jesus.
And let me just mention one thing too. You mentioned earlier and brought up purity and how to go about purity. I want to mention that first of all, I kind of want to mention two things. One, the case for why as far as the case for why we should be pure. What?
So I think we're over time.
Are we over time? Is that what it is?
Keep going.
Did John let out a big sigh? No, I'll wrap up.
John,
That's fine, John.
What's our time right now?
So I just want to mention why we should walk in purity, because it's really like foreign and it's very, very countercultural to the way that we just work in our world with hookup culture and dating culture. The first and most important reason why we should walk in purity is because that's what God calls us to from his word. The Bible tells us to walk in sexual purity, and that the Bible calls us to do that. And it's very clear in the word that that pure sex before God is meant to be in the confines of marriage between one man, one woman. And if you don't like it, you can still read it. It's in the Bible, and that's what it says. So that's number one, is being righteous before God, and that's what God calls us to. But then there's a second part to it that I think is really good to acknowledge, which is that the Bible says you'll know something by the fruit that it bears. You'll know based on the results. And when you look at the results of the culture that we have, which is a dating culture, which is a hookup culture, even if you say, well, I don't like the principles that God is saying, I don't like to be restrained in that way. When you just look at the culture that we have and you look at the results from it, do you see that the results equal into more overall happiness, liberation, freedom, excitement in life? Successful marriage? No, you see it leads to a lot of brokenness. It leads to a lot of adultery. Even the pornographic culture we live in, that porn is just the norm. What does it lead to? Broken households, broken marriages.
Skewed perspectives.
And there's a reason why God created us to be with one person for our life. That's how if you walk it out the way that God said, and again, thank God he restored me. But you save yourself, and then you're with one person, and that's who you're with. There's a reason why God created us that way. It's because even we as human beings, when we go from person after person after person, when we finally settle down with one person, and now we're expected to just only have that desire for one person to follow that for the rest of our life, we have set ourselves up in patterns that's not how we operate. We be with someone until it's no longer feels good to us, or until it no longer feels like what we desire, and then we move on. But now we're married, and now we're supposed to be with this person for decades, even when we're angry with them and all. And you're just setting yourself up for wrong patterns when you walk in a dating culture and a hookup culture.
And there's something amazing about building your foundation of your relationship not on the physical. Right?
Totally.
Being able to build a relationship with somebody where you're a friend first, and where you're able to share and open up. And it's not built up. I think for me, I did not get saved until I was 17, and I grew up very ignorant of the word, and I was in that hookup culture. And I think for me, I was so enwrapped in it, and I just didn't know better. I thought like, this is what I did. But I found myself when I was dating girls, things would get made up through the physical. Rather than like, hey, let's sit and let's
actually
talk it through and let's work it out. And it was fake. It was false. It was this like false foundation that we built for this relationship that we think is love. but it's not.
And when you get married too, I remember, one of the things I was most excited about getting married is that I got my girl here. And obviously when you're trying to do things right, obviously you get to have sex now. Whenever, is that okay to say on this podcast? Yeah. Okay. As a married couple. But let me just say, being a married man and being someone who's been married coming up on a decade, you're interacting physically, intimately like that, like 1% of the time.
Yeah.
99% of the time you're interacting with their values, their opinions,
Yeah.
their thoughts, the way the way they make decisions.
And when you're a parent, then
And when you're a parent, it just
grocery shopping.
10%.
like everything, it finances,
Body
right?
training.
What, where we move. And so we can like so overvalue like the
Yeah,
physical part. It's
so
important.
true.
You should be attracted to them. There should be, that element of it, but we can so overestimate it and forget, wait a second, like we may feel like, oh yeah, we're so in love because we connect so much physically. But then when we get married, we don't interact most of the time physically. We're interacting with each other's values. And if your values aren't aligned,
character.
there's something broken there. And the last thing I want to say before the SD card runs out, John,
It's okay. John.
over
Bless
there
your
on the
heart.
camera, is wherever you are, like whoever you are, I just want to encourage you that doesn't matter where you've come from or how many times you've messed up, or maybe you didn't even see it as messing up. You just fell into a culture that disregards what the Bible says. One of the things that I love so much about the Lord is his amazing grace and restoration. And so no matter where you've come from, you can start today. You can make a decision today and say, God, I need your restoration because I've been totally imperfect. Like I was imperfect and like she was imperfect, but me in a deeper sense was I needed God's restoration, and he can bring it. You're never too far gone for him to bring it. And so I just want to encourage everyone out there to start today and to put proper boundaries where they need to go, and know that you're doing two things. Number one, you're honoring God by doing that, by setting yourself up well and walking in righteousness. And number two, you're also setting up your life well, because most people don't do that. And most people also don't end up in healthy marriages with healthy families and all that. So
And last point, and then I'll bring it to a close.
Yep.
Don't worry, John. You're good.
we're coming.
But
John's just over there just going like this the whole time, like
the
wrap
whole
it
time.
up the whole time.
But
even from the
beauty-
beginning.
beauty is fleeting. Like it's there, but they're not going to be looking the same that they look
No.
40 years down the line.
Yeah,
That's
and
just the reality.
and girls get
Yeah.
pregnant too, and their bodies change during
Yeah.
pregnancy too, and
Yeah.
all that. Yep. So
It's
that
so true.
I was beautiful
happens.
when I was pregnant, though. I had the
Of course you were.
pregnancy glow.
you did have the pregnancy glow.
All
Yes.
that to say,
Yes.
it's good to build the foundation on the values.
Yeah.
And the
Totally.
Bible calls us to be equally yoked with believers, right? And who you marry is one of the biggest decisions you'll ever make. So being able to build the foundation on they love the Lord and they honor the Lord is so
It's the
so
most
key
important thing.
when you step into it.
Yeah.
But
That's
we're
right.
we're gonna end it there. Thank you guys so much for joining us on the Beyond Pod. We love you guys
So
so
fun.
much. You guys are amazing. Thank you, Lauren. You're awesome. Nux. There you go. But thank you guys for joining the Beyond Pod. We love you guys so much. Make sure you guys like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the post notifications. And last but not least, we have something called Jesus Disciple. If you want to take that next step in your walk with Jesus, go to jesusdisciple.com or click the link in our bio, and you can get connected. Do it with your friends. Do it with your neighbors. It's just a way for you to be a disciple of Jesus through reading your word, through praying, through meditating on scripture, listening to messages. It'll clearly and dramatically shift your walk with Jesus. So make sure you guys check that out in our bio. We love you guys, and we'll see you on the next episode. Peace.
Peace.